Weather Scope.
A major winter storm continues to harass those of you in parts of the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Northeast. Snow from the storm is coming to an end across much of the Great Lakes, but freezing rain continues to be a serious problem in parts of northern New England, and flooding too is a major concern throughout the Northeast. Good morning and welcome to this edition of Weather Scope. I'm Cheryl Lemke. Now today we have special coverage, including a Weather Channel crew on location in Vermont. And here's Rick Griffin in the Forecast Center with all the details. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning. Thanks a lot, Cheryl. Yes, we've had significant flooding that has taken place in Pennsylvania, New York, and parts of central and southern New England. And without a doubt, a major ice storm in northern New York and northern New England, not to mention southeast Canada, where it was probably one of the most significant icing events in history around Montreal. Let's take a look at some video. This is in Maine at Lewiston, where the storm knocked out power in most of the area, including nearby towns of Auburn and Norway. Counties like Androscoggin, Kennebec, and Cumberland counties were especially hard hit. Many folks were forced to seek refuge in hotels or shelters. Now, the light freezing rain continues in the area this morning, but it may turn to just rain this afternoon as temperatures rise. But before that happens, the wind is increasing in that part of the state of Maine, and it's felt that wind may cause more severe damage to tree limbs and twigs and that sort of thing because of the heavy weight of the accumulated ice. And you get a 10 to 20 mile an hour wind, and there could be more very, very serious problems that have yet to develop, but may if the winds increase in that section of the state of Maine. By the way, conflicting reports, but as many as 550,000 people are without power, and that's just in New Hampshire with about 50,000, and the state of Maine around 500,000 people. As we look at the radar, you can see that the icing continues in parts of Maine, right now in Lewiston and Augusta, and also in Norway. There's freezing rain. Also in Portland, freezing rain continues. Once again, it's more of a patchy precipitation than we saw yesterday, but still significant icing continues. Freezing drizzle up at Burlington, Vermont. And again, we have some rain, significant rain back over western New York and western sections of Pennsylvania. We'll talk about that in just a minute. First of all, let's go to ice-covered Burlington, Vermont, and get the latest from Jim Cantori. Hello, Jim.
Hey, Rick. Once again this morning, this is just part of the stories you mentioned. I was just hearing about the southern province of Quebec. As much as now this is amazing to me, as much as 40% of the entire province. I mean, we're not talking about just Montreal, but the entire province is without power. Now, you're talking about a province which is probably about the size of the Northeast in scope, in real estate. So just a huge area without power, and that, of course, part of the story there in southern Canada. But here's why. We've had about a 5-day period here of ice, freezing rain, temperatures here at the surface which are 32 degrees or below, and rain actually coming down, heavy rain, as much as 2 to 4 inches of rain yesterday. And you can see we've got icicles upon icicles here. This is one of the more fortunate trees, but I'll tell you, Rick, you were nailing it right on the head. If we start getting any kind of wind, any additional rain, any snow, we're talking about some serious problems here. It's not only the tree limbs, but also the power lines. We'll pan up to this power pole which is beside me here, and you can see how the ice is caked on to not only the line itself, but some of the transformers and also the pole. So a tremendous amount of weight as a result of the ice, and we've can be fortunate. At least one good thing, the main thoroughfares here seem to be fine. There's a lot of traffic on Route 2 this morning, and that's really because they've just been out here salting a ton. There are shelters open here in Chittenden County locally at the Memorial Auditorium. Folks have been taking advantage of that, but really a lot of the folks that we're seeing here at the hotels are people from New York State who have already gone 3 nights without power, and this would, of course, be their 4th consecutive night. So a serious icing situation here. It's still below freezing. We've still got freezing drizzle, and again, any wind, rain, snow coming at us is going to make things a lot worse. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, Jim. We'll be back with you in about a half an hour. Thanks for that report. Now let's talk about the rain. And how about a flood warning? Well, that continues in effect for you folks in Lycoming and Sullivan counties in central Pennsylvania. And notice on our radar here that we have more heavy rain moving into that region. The ground is saturated, rivers and creeks are running high, and there could be some fairly serious flooding developing. By the way, at Harrisburg, there's a flood warning for the Susquehanna River. It's felt that the Susquehanna at Harrisburg will probably crest a little bit above flood stage on Saturday morning. There's also flood warnings for some of the rivers and creeks around Buffalo, Syracuse, and Rochester. That's a pretty volatile system, and we actually have some thunderstorms on this January morning in Oswego County, New York, near Scranton, Pennsylvania, and a few again approaching the Williamsport, Pennsylvania area. We have what's called a warm sector in here. That's where some of the storms are developing, and very close to the low pressure center there's very strong vertical motion in the atmosphere, and that's helping to enhance the storms in this vicinity. It's very warm here, but again below freezing with a north to northeast wind over Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire, as well as upstate New York. The icing continues. If you're traveling, look out for those icy highways. If you're in western New York, the highway could be flooded. Rochester rain 34. Look at New York City and Philadelphia in contrast. And later today, you'll still be in the 60s. Not quite as warm as the 70 you had yesterday in Newark, New Jersey, but still an unusually mild January day is in store. Harrisburg, too. And the record warmth was widespread in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast yesterday. Don't forget, if you're away from your television but close to your PC, you can catch the latest all over the country, for that matter, on weather.com on the internet. Now let's go back to the studio, look at some Arctic air in the northern plains and a new storm coming into California. Here's Cheryl Lemke.
Well, winter has returned with a vengeance to parts of the central U.S. Arctic air from Canada has brought you frigid temperatures in the northern plains, and you're still getting some snow this morning over parts of the Great Lakes from that very same storm system that disrupted much of the east yesterday. Well, the snow has finally come to an end for Chicago, but it did fall overnight, causing lots of problems. Many roads were covered with snow, and slippery conditions led to some accidents. Total accumulations ranged from 2 to 6 inches. Checking out the Great Lakes this morning, again, we have a couple low-pressure systems working across the eastern lakes and a new storm system now dropping down through the upper Mississippi Valley, and this should keep the weather fairly active. Now, for those of you in Chicago, basically the worst is over. Today, basically mostly cloudy skies, a chance for a few stray snow flurries. But even though the heavy snows have now come to an end, roadways are still bound to be rather snow-covered in some places, so be extra cautious this morning. Maybe you're coming in from north of town around Buffalo Grove and Arlington Heights, coming in around Rand Road and heading towards the downtown area. Be really careful and just give yourself some extra driving time to get to your destination. Snows, though, are lifting northward towards Green Bay and Rhinelander, Wausau, and Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and more snowy, wintry weather, too, for Marquette. As we pull away from the Great Lakes, we've had a little dusting of snow, too, this morning from Rapid City on into Scottsbluff and Valentine, Nebraska, as a cold front continues to drop through the area. Then a nice break in the weather from Denver through Salt Lake City. But our next weather maker is coming on board across California. It's still very poorly organized, but we have this very moist, steady flow coming in from off the Pacific, and that's helping to generate some showers this morning. Well, the rain's coming down currently for Redding and Red Bluff and Chico. Rain down towards Fresno. Some sloppy weather, too, around the Bay Area. So if you're heading off towards the Golden Gate Bridge, it's going to be wet this morning. More rains, too, northward over towards Crescent City and Humboldt. And we have the rains, too, on into Brookings, Oregon. A quick look at the temperatures. It's been incredibly mild across the east. Enjoy it, though. Today we'll still have some fairly mild temperatures, but things will be cooling down quite a bit by the weekend, and the really cold air is welling up into Canada, and that too will start to dive southward just in time for the weekend. Today we watch that low across the northeast finally retreating, and look at that, high pressure builds across the southeast. A beautiful day and some nice bright sunny weather too for Dallas. So